Quaid Azam Pot 317. The rest of the debate was an anticlimax. The tide of opinion had turned, and the Temple would, while maintaining his criticism, duly withdrew his motion. Thereafter, on 5 March 1947, the Commons debated the issue. Records are almost elegiac with when describing the debate. The opening of the two-day debate in the House of the Commons was obviously a great parliamentary occasion. Cribb's speeches, always so closely reasoned, were on this occasion delivered with great authority and emphasis. Cripps, was at pains to stress that it was administratively and militarily out of the question to stay on beyond 1948. Otherwise, he laid no special emphasis on the time limit and he made no reference whatever to Lord Wavell. This last omission was undoubtedly a pity, as it tended to confirm the ill disposed gossip about serious differences of opinion between the government and the returning viceroy. When Churchill resumed the debate on Thursday, 6th March 1947, recorded Campbell Johnson, we were regaled with the long awaited firework display. Over the year, Churchill has remained very loyal to his pet aversions and what may perhaps best be termed his Indian invective proclaims probably the most rigid and unbending of all opinions upon the public issues of our time. He started off by taking his hand on Cribb's missions of 1942. Although the offer had not been accepted at the time, both sides of the House were still bound by it. He denounced the present plan as involving grave departures from the scope and integrity of its principles. There was at least there was at last a reference in this debate to Wavell, but it was far from cordial. The Viceroy, Lord Wavell, has been dismissed. I hold no brief for Lord Wavell. He has been willing or unwilling agent of the government in all errors or mistakes into which they have been led. But Churchill continued to assert that he did not know why Wavell had been cast aside at this juncture, and to press for a personal statement from him on his return. As for the new Viceroy, Churchill inquired with biting sarcasm, is he to make new effort to restore the situation? Or is it merely Operation Scuttle on which he and other distinguished officers have been dispatched? I'm bound to say the whole thing wears the aspects of an attempt by the government to make use of the brilliant war figures in order to cover up melancholy and disastrous transaction. Churchill then entered the field of prophecy. India is to be subjected not merely to partition but to fragmentation and to haphazard fragmentation. In handing over the government to India to these so called political classes, we are handing over to men of straw, of whom in a few years no trace will remain. This government, by their latest action, this 15 months limitation, crippled the new viceroy and destroy the prospect of even going through the business on the agenda which has to be settled. And then that funeral conclusion may have defeated Britain against her foes. None can defend her against herself, but at least let us not add by shameful flight, by a premature, hurried scuttle, at least let us not add to the pangs of sorrow. So many of us feel the taint and smear of the shame, marvelous, resonant, and Gibbonskin elocution, but alas, so greatly in error. Well, we have the partition boundaries in the Punjab. Well, Punjab was a Muslim majority province, but it was, in fact, subject to a division. It was the national boundaries as laid down by the first schedule of the Indian Independence Act 1947. and boundaries on the finally demarcated boundary commission. And then there is the partition boundaries in Bengal and Assam, showing national boundaries laid down in first schedule of Indian Independent Act 1947, and the boundaries as finally the demarcated by the Boundary Commission 1947.